If you or someone you know is struggling with alcoholism or addiction, do not hesitate to reach out for help. You can find numerous free resources on our website, thebeginagainpodcast.com, and there are tons of resources and support networks available online, in person, or just a phone call away. You don't have to face this challenge alone. Welcome to the Begin Again podcast. I'm your host, Gary Menkes. On the Begin Again podcast, we delve into the inspiring journeys of individuals who have overcome alcoholism and addiction and emerged as true trailblazers in entrepreneurship, business, sports, and beyond. Through authentic, uplifting, and profound conversations with our guests, we aim to shatter the stigma surrounding addiction and demonstrate that recovery can be a catalyst for remarkable success, strength, and resilience. We firmly believe that by listening to these accounts, you will be empowered to unlock your own potential, instigate positive change in your life, and contribute to the creation of a better world. So, get ready to be inspired and embark on your own personal journey of growth with the Begin Again podcast. Welcome back to the Begin Again podcast. I'm your host, Gary Menkes. And today, it is a real pleasure. I am really looking forward to this. We have Michael Molthan, otherwise known as M2 The Rock. As Michael achieved great success as one of the most sought-after luxury home builders, a drug and alcohol addiction led him down a destructive path. 27 arrests and a bout with homelessness later. It wasn't until a nearly 4-year jail sentence that he could finally see clearly. There was not just one rock bottom, but many. Today, M2 The Rock draws from Michael's personal experiences and uses his magnetic, relatable personality to inspire others to guide and empower you through this transformative journey, demonstrating that your rock bottom can be the stepping stone to a life of fulfillment and purpose. And as Michael says it so perfectly, your rock bottom becomes the turning point when you declare, I am ready to change. I love that quote, man. I really do. And thank you so much for being here, Michael. It means the world to me, and I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Gary, thank you so much. And from all of us here at M2 The Rock, we support what you're doing. I've been looking at your stuff since we first met and you reached out, and I applaud you. And from all of us here, like I said, at M2 The Rock, we really support and endorse what you're doing, and we appreciate you.
That means the world to me. You know, as you know, I'm fairly new to this podcast world. I'm not sure how the word podcast even got into my vocabulary, but here I am. And to hear you say those words, it means a lot. It means I'm on the right path. And, you know, this very quickly became a lot bigger than me, like immediately. And there's a higher purpose here. And you speak a lot about your higher purpose. So tell us, how did we get here?
Man, it was a journey, when I go into the rooms of support group meetings, and I don't wave any flag for any support group meeting to protect the anonymity of these programs, which I highly respect. I announce myself in these meetings that, hi, I'm Michael. I'm a drug addict, alcoholic. And the reason why we say those in those meetings is for the newcomer to feel safe that they're in the right room, that they feel that connection and feel safe, and, they're not an outcast. But that's not who I am today. That's not who I am today. I'm in recovery. I'm a recovered drug addict, alcoholic. And as a result of a 12-step program, support group meetings, and an incredible sponsor, I get to live this life of being happy, joyous, and free today. But, to address your question is, when we share our story, we share about, what it was like, what happened and what it's like today. And we briefly talked on the phone earlier, what it was like. I'm no different than any other drug addict, alcoholic. I drank alcohol, I did drugs, I fell down. I woke up the next day and said, I'm never going to do this again. And I meant it. I meant it with, every ounce of blood in my body. And then I would get drunk and high that night. I just need one, just to taper off, to level out, and I'll just, wean off of this. And I could never do it. And, I just didn't know why I was doing the things I was doing. And, in 2002, at the time, I had a lot of money and, was successful, like you said. And I was a good person. We're good people. It's not about getting good. It's about getting well, in recovery. And, in 2002, I went to Betty Ford. And the reason why I don't say treatment and I say Betty Ford, because that's where important people like me go. That's how selfish and self-centered I was. And so I wanted to go to where, the best went. my counselor there said, you'll never get this program until you do step 3. You'll never experience sobriety until you make that decision to turn your will and life over to the care of God as you understand him. And I was out. I didn't want to hear that word. I didn't want to hear the G word. And when I left Betty Ford, they simply told me, they gave me some literature and go to meetings and work these 12 steps and get a sponsor. Men work with men, women work with women, which is very important. And I heard them. I got home to a housewarming party, and when everybody left, immediately fear crept in and resentments crept in, and I was off to the races again in 2002. In 2017, I'm miraculously released from prison, and they told me the same thing as Betty Ford did: go to meetings, work the steps, and get a sponsor. So I made that choice and decision to do that. And here I am today.
You talk about the fear and resentment you had when you come home to that housewarming party, right? What are the fear and resentments that were that were really at the forefront?
Well, I tried to figure the program out. I tried to, because I think I'm smart, and I got it all together, and I'm not like, the guy who's on the street homeless, alcoholic. I was kind of that guy. I was like, that's not me yet. You're eligible too. But these words that were used all the time, I didn't know what they really meant. Like, what is fear? What is resentment? What is forgiveness? All these words that we hear, but did I really know what it meant? And I actually did a show on fear, and it's part of my presentation. And fear, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for my faith to grow, or it's an opportunity for me to be self-will run riot. And, fear, if you break it down to an acronym, and an acronym is where each letter stands for a word, it's false evidence appearing real. It's not real. And there is a solution to fear. And I didn't know that because it's such a simple solution. But if I don't do anything, Gary, with the feeling of fear, it turns into a resentment. And resentment is the number one offender. It's killing the nation. I mean, it's killing every human being. We're all addicts. We're all addicts. There's a stigma with drug addiction and alcoholism because our consequences are so severe and our actions are so severe. If I don't do anything with the feeling of resentment, then it turns into anger. If I don't do anything with the feeling of anger, it turns into rage. And if I don't do anything with the feeling of rage, it turns into isolation. If I don't do anything with isolation, then it turns into paranoia. And that paranoia is very dangerous, where a simple text, if I send to, my other half saying, I love you, and they don't respond back, I get down to paranoia that she's leaving me, and, no one likes me. And I wake up in jail again with needles sticking out of my arm and not realizing, why all this happened. So the solution to fear, before it gets to a resentment, is to simply talk about it. And that's where a sponsor or a mentor comes in, because before I'd have these simple fears. I'm like I just brush it off. Like, I got to shake out of it. I'm thinking crazy. Nobody else thinks this way. And they do. But I call my sponsor and say, listen, I sent this text and, all this stuff. And, he'll say, well, the problem is that you had expectations when you send the text. You didn't ask a question. You just said, I love you. You know what I mean? And you're expecting this novel to come back about how great you are. And it sets me up for a resentment. So that's how I broke down fear. And it's really relatable to everybody. And, that's what I want to do at Into the Rock is make it relatable to, everybody, because we are all addicts. We're addicted to visible things to try to fix my invisible problems.
I love that. You say so much there. I didn't know. I've looked up the definition of those words, of fear and of resentment, when I came into the program. I didn't know what they were either. I read in the book, I read what they were, and I wasn't really grasping it, to be honest with you. And then I read a definition on resentment, and it could be something that just irks you just a little bit, or just pisses you off just a little bit. I'm like, well, whoa, I got pages and pages and pages of those.
Right.
But I love what you say about fear too. Like, when I was out there, Michael, I had it in my mind, I wasn't afraid of anything. And I kind of went out that way. And at least that was the outside. I didn't realize until I got sober and in recovery that I had afraid of everything. I could pinpoint fear to almost everything in my life. Even to this day, I have to work to it. And one of my favorite quotes, though, that I learned in the rooms was, you can't live in faith and fear at the same time. So it's one of the other. So when I am in fear, I sometimes need to step back, maybe do a little prayer and just turn things over, step 3 to my higher power. And I'm in a much better place. I could put fear. I'm afraid what Michael's going to think of me. I'm afraid that how this is going to go. I'm afraid of I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. All those, not enoughs, which littered my mind. But what you said, though, also in the acronym is they're not real.
No, they're not real.
I've also realized that, not to put a number on it, but probably really high, 90% or so of my fears are projections in the future of things that I'm not going to have, things that are going to happen to me. And my sponsor had said to me one day, I wasted so much time of my life worried about things that never, ever happened to me. And so those are the projections. That's why for me, I have to get there, and it's hard to do, but that's why you need to, for me, speak for myself, really live in today and just in today. And when I'm really there, I'm in a great place. And then I'm filled with gratitude, and I'm on the plane I'm supposed to be at. I'm not wired that way, though. I don't wake up in the morning, playing with house money, even though we should be. And sometimes I beat myself up for that. Like, I find that in our rooms too. Like, we are so good at beating ourselves up, abnormally. But you said something also about, the keeping the anonymity of the 12-step programs. And I say this a lot as well. Like, when you walk into a room or wherever it is, could be an AA meeting. Everyone knows that's how I got sober. I got sober in AA, and it saved my life. I don't care how you get here at all. But when you walk into a room, or Betty Ford, or wherever it is, there's no big sign, right, that says, come on in, you can completely change your life here. I just went in to stop drinking, but little did I know, very slowly, I started changing my life. And I am a thick-headed guy, Michael. So it took me a while to get the God part of it, even though even early on, they said, just the meeting could be your higher power. Turn it over to the meeting. And I did that. But today, I start my day in prayer and on my knees in prayer, thanking him in gratitude. And that's stuff that wasn't, on my radar 17 plus years ago when growing up. And like I said, you said so much stuff there. I know there was an event, I believe, when you were incarcerated, right? Can you tell us about that moment? I've seen you out there and I love your content, but can you tell us about what happened there?
Yeah. So, after my 27th mugshot, I finally said the most honest thing that I've ever said, that we get, tons of messages and people reaching out, to the Rock. And it's usually loved ones and family members, hey, can you help my son? Can you help my daughter? Can you help my husband, wife, all that stuff. And we have an automatic response. And because we've had to set boundaries up in place, we direct them to the website, and there's resources on the website, where they can get help. But if it's someone that I know that's a close friend and, they want me to talk to, their loved one, my response is that, he can call me, if it is a lady that's going to reach out to call me, I have a boundary in place a disclaimer that I say, I'll talk to you, but you're going to be on speakerphone with another woman in the room. Do you have a problem with that? So they don't. And, the direction I go there is to try to get them, connected with another woman, that's in recovery, that can help her. But when I do talk to these men and these ladies, I ask a simple question and I tell them there's a right answer. And that answer is, why I ask them this question: why do you drink and why do you do drugs? And they always come, back and explaining. It's my husband, my wife. I go, wrong answer. My job, wrong answer. I was abused. I have trauma, wrong answer. And all these things, these questions I'm asking, and they eventually get frustrated, and it's good when they start getting frustrated because they go, M2, I don't know. I said, that's the right answer. And that's what happened to me that I recognized is that I finally said, I don't know why I drink. I don't know why I do drugs. I don't know why I'm doing this. And I'm willing to do anything it takes to get clean and sober. And I didn't care how long the judge was going to put me in prison. I just didn't care anymore because For so long, I was trying to get clean and sober my way. You know, I would do all these little things. I'd go to some meetings and all, but I wasn't open minded. And, I had to change everything. I had to change one thing and that's changed everything. So when I said, I don't know, that's when this awakening started to happen. When I was incarcerated the last time, I was very paranoid. I was always pacing. They diagnose you when you come in as far as what your crime is and, put you in the proper tank. And for some reason, they put me in an aggravated assault tank. So I was in this tank with murderers and, that were doing life. I mean, they had no hope. They weren't going anywhere. And it was rock and roll when I went in there. And, I went in there and I'm white and proper and, scary. And when I was in there, my cellmate, which is a cellie, was this old guy doing life. His name was Uwe. He brought me in and he said, we would be able to get out of our 4x9 cell, 3 to 4 hours a day, something like that. Wasn't long. And we were locked up. And he told me, he said, man, you're doing a hard time and you're out in that world. And what that means when you're locked up is you're out in that world thinking about the future and the past. And the fear and anxiety is creeping up. And I'm thinking about what people are thinking about me and all this stuff. And then this, magical day, just as simple as, he asked if I would read to him. I'm like, why? And he says, well, because I can't read, I can't write. Come to find it, no one in the tank could read or write. And I have really cool handwriting and people want me to write letters for them. And then I recognize it like 4 days go by and I'm calm and I'm at somewhat peace. And I'm thinking about this. I'm like, 4 days just went by and I'm not pacing and moving around. And then on July 7th, 2017, I was in my top bunk asleep and I just woke up and I prayed so many times these foxhole prayers, like, come into my life, save me, change me, help me. And that night, in the middle of the night, I woke up and I literally couldn't breathe, Gary. I mean, I could not breathe. And there was this tightness in my chest. And, I thought I had having a heart attack, but it wasn't this physical, uncomfortable pain. It was just something different. So I took this deep breath and breathed in, and then I just breathed out. And when I breathed out, all this, anger and resentment and all this stuff is just coming out of my body. And I take this deep breath in. It was like ice water come in, and I was full of just love. And I just loved everybody around me. It was just like, it was just like this overwhelming feeling. And then I started to realize, not immediately, but as I'm processing all this that's going on, I had this spiritual awakening like no other. And I realized that for the first time, by reading to these inmates and serving them, that I was out of self, and expecting nothing in return. I wasn't like this jailhouse minister or anything like that. It's just people were attracted to me. And I was actually reading, I have a book called Detours written by Dr. Tony Evans, a big pastor here in Dallas. And I was reading that and they could really relate to it. And then it led me to the Living Recovery Bible. It has 12 steps in it. And I was reading that, and these words were no longer black letters on white paper. They were really helping me, and I could relate to it. And then the big book started really making sense to me. And then I started getting into history and knowledge and studying it. And when I was locked up, I didn't have this business plan or this, awakening that I was going to be this influencer, speaker, into the rock and all that. Still don't. This is not what I had planned. And then on October 13th, 2017, I was in transit and I was down in Central Texas, and I walked into another ag tank and it was rock and roll. I saw people getting killed in front of me. I was just to myself reading and journaling, and an inmate walks up. He says, man, you got really cool handwriting. What's it say? And I told him what it said, and he goes, well, what are you reading? Because I was, underlining stuff. And I said, well, I'm reading this. He says, will you read it to me? And I said, why? And he says, well, I can't read. And it's, in the film, there's a short film out there. That's when I looked up at God, and I realized for the first time I was looking through God's perspective. In the literature that we read from in this 12-step recovery book, it's being rocketed to the fourth dimension. And what that means is that I'm looking at things through God's perspective. The things that don't make sense to me, the things that were done wrong, we look at it through a different perspective, and we look at it through God's perspective on what he is wanting to happen through that. And so I was looking at it through a different, perspective that, I see you. I know why I'm here, and I'm reading to these guys. On October 13, 2017, they they came over the speaker and they said, Michael Molthan bunking junk. And I was miraculously released from prison, and they literally had to kick me out because I knew it was a technical error. Even the guards knew it was technical, and they released me as a result of forgiveness. That's when I forgave all the people in my life who had done me wrong. And most importantly, I forgave myself, for the things that I did. And that freedom was so amazing. I'm a Bible guy, it works for me. That's my higher power. And, it says in Matthew 6:14-15, it says, this is my translation, when we forgive the ones who have hurt us, God will bless your game. If I have a resentment and I'm holding on to it, it blocks us from our destiny. It blocks us from destiny. And once we release that, God will, take us to our destiny, because I can't help anybody, Gary, if I have a resentment. Can't help anybody. And I see that a lot in people with early recovery. Step one, we admit we're powerless over alcohol and their life's unmanageable, and it kind of feels good. And we go to step 12 and we get addicted to the feeling of helping people. You know what I mean? But we can't help anybody if we can't answer the question, this is why I drink and why I did drugs. As a result of that, I got set free and traveled 300 miles, and Judge Bennett, set me free. And she says, go pay it forward. And local media got a hold of it. And it's just been nonstop ever since for the last 6 years. So
unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Just
yeah.
incredible. Right. But
it's tough. This is tough. I mean, I live the life, I'm transparent, I tackle tough topics, if I've been struggling, I'll share that on the platform, but when I'm struggling, I also provide the solution. This is how I'm working through it today. And that helps others.
Can you put a finger on, like, which I'll go back to your quote, which I love, your rock bottom becomes the turning point when you declare, I'm ready to change. Can you put a finger on your?
Yeah, I can. I realize that, that's another thing, hit rock bottom. What does that mean? You know what I mean? And I would even say, all the times of, crashing and burning, I said, I finally hit my bottom, it's over. What got me to rock bottom, Gary, were my character defects. Okay. It wasn't the drinking and drugging. It was resentment and anger and rage and isolation and the paranoia, revenge, morbid reflection, self-pity. That got me to rock bottom. That's the only tools I ever knew. That's all I knew. So I would use those tools to get out of rock bottom. I would have resentment and anger and rage fuel me to make the comeback. You know what I mean? The Rocky music would play, and I said, I'm coming back. I'm gonna prove you wrong. I am going to prove you wrong. And so I would use those same character defects to get out of rock bottom. So in recovery and in this disease, and for all of us, people would say, Michael, we see this cycle in you, right? You have a cycle. It's so predictable. And it made me so mad inside. I understood, but I didn't understand. And so I wanted to understand what this cycle was. This last time when I hit rock bottom, I finally realized it was the same rock. I mean, it was the same rock every time I hit it. And I realized that the rock at the bottom and all these times was God, right? It was God. So I made the choice to stay at rock bottom, to stay next to the rock and have men in recovery, godly men, pull me out of the bottom. And God worked through these men to get me out of it, starting with the inmates that I was locked up with. God used these men to pull me up slowly. And it started with just simply reading to an illiterate man who murdered someone, intentionally murdered someone, to get out of self. And it slowly got me out of the bottom.
Unbelievable. And you said back before, which I love, your solution to fear is speaking about it, is talking it out, is sharing things. And
that's simple.
Right. And, I could speak for myself, and I'm sure you didn't grow up that way. Like, you can't say a word to anyone. You keep everything bottled in. If you speak out, you're a weak man. You don't share what's going on. You don't share feelings, man up, tough up. It's all BS. None, all of it is BS. And you kind of mentioned, you were touching upon, and I say for myself, I was given this gift of an open mind. Like, I know nothing. I thought I knew everything, and I tried to do everything my way. And it wasn't until I I turned everything over and I surrendered. And when some, strange guy came up and said, "Hey man, give me a call tomorrow. Here's my number," when every instinct in my body is to tell him to get the fuck out of here. Like, talking to the wrong guy. When I was given that gift of, I don't know anything, these guys are sober, it makes no sense, but I'm going to call this guy tomorrow just because he told me to. And that was, I call it for me, given this gift of an open mind. You say it so, you articulate it so amazingly, actually, your whole solution to fear, but every step to it, to anger, to rage, to isolation, to paranoia. I'm the same way too. You send a text message, sometimes then this is new too. I have to ask myself, what is the outcome what am I really after by sending this text message? And sometimes you got to step back because it's my ego that wants something in return by this text message, even though it's masked in a very, nice message, right? Like, I love you, like you had said, using your example, but you really want something back. And that's my ego. That's my self-centered ego. And ego, I love this term, this acronym too, is edged God out. It is pushing away and it's just putting Gary into focus. And when I know I am right where I'm supposed to be and my higher power, it has me right where I'm supposed to be, that's when I'm best place.
That's right. And that's why talking about it, there's a difference between being scared and fear. It's a big difference. Okay. The guy sitting here has a gun to my head. That's scared, because that's really happening. Fear is a whole different animal because it just doesn't exist. And that's why just simply talking about it, just snaps me out of it that, okay, this is not real. I mean, I'm tripping, I'm future tripping. And for a long time, and I'd get in fear. What it is I'm going into the future alone in my head, right? I didn't like that feeling, Gary. So I would try to fix it in my brain, and so I would shift the view. And what I would do is I would go to the past, try to make that feeling go away. But when I would go into the past, I would feel anger and rage, depression. We start, we battle with depression and it's mental health. All these things. And I didn't like that feeling. So I would go back to the future. I'd do this game back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until I eventually took that drink and it would give me that sense of ease and comfort. A euphoria is what it was. And it would lie to me and said, I'm in the now. I'm like, okay, I'm right here, right now. So how would I stay there? I would do more. I would do more to shut the noise down, and that's how I would stay in the now. And then as I was drinking and doing drugs, I was creating chaos. I was creating it. So I would drink more and more and more to avoid this chaos that I was creating, but I didn't realize I played a role in it. And it's this vicious disease where we end up incarcerated, or at rock bottom. And so that's where and everybody feels this way. There's no such thing as a normal person. Everybody feels this way. And that is our mission at Into the Rock. We are all addicts. There's codependency. Anger is a drug. We can get comfortable being angry. We love it. I mean, it's a drug, and you lay up all night trying to plot and scheme and create the perfect movie on how to get even. And then we don't go to sleep and the other person's sleeping just fine, and so it's this vicious cycle that we struggle with.
Yeah. And that's, you bring up a good point too. And that was something I learned later on, is that the only person that the resentments are hurting is myself. And the person that I am angry at or I'm resentful, they have no idea about this. And, so the only person that's being affected, and again, I talk about my ego didn't want to accept that, got me angry. I had resentment because of that fact. But when I came around and I accepted it, and the acceptance prayer is one of my biggest ones, and it's one of my most helpful prayers. I'm in a much better place and I'm right where I'm supposed to be. You talked about also, you said this word, addicted to helping people. What a beautiful term. And so you start reading, you're where you are, and you start reading to these men, right? These incarcerated men, because they can't read or write. And you just start reading. Then you realize this is God through you helping these men. And at this point that's why you're there. Where do you go from there to starting to get addicted to helping people?
Well, what I meant by that is I noticed that I felt good. And I see a lot of people in recovery that come in, and there's phases of recovery. If we're talking about 12 steps, there's the detox phase. That's where the newcomer is going to support group meetings and they keep coming back. You know what I mean? The first 30 days, and they feel safe. They feel like they're in a room that they can relate to people. They're also detoxing. Their body is flushing all this, chemicals out. So they physically start feeling better. Step two is that, there's a power greater than ourselves to restore us to sanity. Now, the spiritual principle behind step two is hope, right? Mm-hmm. That's why I drank and did drugs. I was trying to get some hope. It was this false hope. But as you're detoxed, the detox phase, then there's called this honeymoon phase, which are the pink cloud, as we hear, in the recovery. It also happens for, born again Christians, new Christians, and all this stuff. You start feeling this hope. And what a lot of it is we physically feel better, and we're in a group and we're connected. We're making some friends. We're taking risks. We're being honest. We're being vulnerable. When I'm sharing, everybody in the room's head is doing this. You know what I mean? And so, nodding up and down. And so there's a connection, and I start feeling some hope. I really feel good. This is a very, very dangerous step in early recovery, because when I start feeling hope is when it's like, you know what? I got this. I don't need to go to another support group meeting today. I need to get out there and get back to work, and I need to do this. And we start feeling this hope, or we want to go open treatment centers, or we want to go have our own podcast, and we want to go be a national speaker, and we want to do all this stuff. And so we go from 1, 2 to 12, and 12 is having had a spiritual awakening. We start sharing this message with others, right? And it's very dangerous. And I've seen a lot of people do it, and they relapse because they don't do the self-inventory. They don't do 4 through 11 because they don't have a solution to resentment. They don't have the answer. This is why I drank. This is why I do drugs. They don't share. This is the role I played in my resentment, right? It's like, wait a minute, you played a role in your grandfather sexually abusing you, M2? Yeah, I did. And the role I played in it is I chose to hold on to the resentment, and I got to look at his childhood and look at the way he was raised and look at it through God's perspective. And once I did that, and so those are the things I get to share today as far as doing all the work. And when I got released, we went through these steps very quickly. We went through the traditions very quickly because, I was on iHeartRadio, 2 weeks, after I was released, with a year sobriety. And so, I was a target, like, who's this guy? And so what I did is I kept the focus on me of this is where I'm at today. Yes, I'm new in sobriety. Yes, I've worked the steps, and people have got to watch me, grow by sharing just my personal experience on that.
Everything changed for me too when I did step 4, and you bring up such an important point. Like, I couldn't wait to write. It was the first time I ever wrote any of this stuff down, period. Right. For many of us, it's the first time we're ever taking pen to paper. And, I remember going through this with my sponsor saying, I can't wait till he reads this so he knows what happened to me, and then he'll understand, still that chip on my shoulder, like that, that anger, it was all there. And when I had to look at things, even like you had said, I saw things that, 8, 9, 10-year-old boys not supposed to see. My dad had a very active dad and stuff all over the house. And, so I had this was in my back pocket my whole entire life. And it probably led to some of my the way I behaved, right? And my behaviors and my cunning and baffling and powerfulness. I baffled everyone around me, and it probably helped my disease. But I also say that hesitantly because nobody put a bottle to my lips. Nobody put a drug in my body. I did it all myself. But I wrote this stuff down, and I shared it with him. And to your point, what you just said, what was my role when I was just a young little boy standing around there? My role is I still hold this to this day. Right. And so I did that. And even with that, I had a hard time letting go. And I had not done an amends to my dad, because I held on to it for so long that, the amends still needs to come to me. So I wasn't there yet, Mike. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I did the amends to him. Something else had come up. I had his brother-in-law, his sister's husband had passed away, and there's a whole family thing, and no one was speaking. And I went to talk to him and I said, you know what, this is recently, this is 2 years ago. I've been sober 17 years. So I did my amends with my dad in 15 years of sobriety.
That's
But I
awesome.
went and told him, yeah, I said, listen, I went there for two reasons. One is I'm going to clear my side of the street. I'm going to clear the wreckage of the past on my side with him. But I'm going to tell him, if you don't go to this wake or this funeral for your sister's husband, we used to be so tight, all of us, like, that's it. Like your nephews, I'm just putting myself in their shoes. You're done. There's no chance. They'd love to see you there, but if you don't show up for this one, they're not gonna. That's it. And then I said, and by the way, Dad, I've been sober for 15 years, and I immediately I lost it, and I just said, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry for all the stuff I did. I'm sorry for when I called you out. I'm sorry for when I threatened you. I'm sorry what happened that night at the dog field in front of your friends. It's funny. Maybe funny is not the right word, but it's amazing how as soon as I got there, like honestly, as soon as I started the amends, I lost it. And lo and behold, again, stuff that I don't know anything, like he and I's relationship is so much better just because of that. And it's just because, and he was like, Gary, it's all right. Like, stop, he's like, don't worry, stop. And, I bring that up because we're on a level now. Like there's no BS. There's no underlying undertones that we haven't shared. It's all out. It's all kind of been done. Like we're in the same level playing field, if you will, if that makes sense. And you brought up character defects. I find it so funny in the big book that step 6, 7, there's like, it's like not even a paragraph. It's like 1, 2. And I remember the first few times I was like, oh, cool. Done it with 6 and then with 7. Let's move on to 8. And now being sober as long as I have, like we read this book, Drop the Rock. I'm sure you're aware of Drop the Rock. And it's all about steps in 6, 6, and 7. And it's all about my personal character defects. And we read this book. I'm in a Monday night group with a good bunch of sober guys. And we read this book. We finished it. And we're like, we got to read it again. We all went right through it again because it's all about our character defects, and it's about fears. We still have all these fears. And I really love what you say, that everyone has these fears, Michael, because I'll speak for myself again. I always think, even now, it's just me. I'm the only one that thinks this way. My thinking is abnormal. I'm an alcoholic, so no one thinks this way. Only I do. I'm crazy. I'm not normal. But the truth is, we all struggle with that. And I love that that's part of your message, and it's part of sort of your mission statement. That's why you can help so many people.
That's a lot of good stuff you just said there. In the 12-step program, I'll hear people say, oh, the dreaded 4-step, the dreaded 4-step. Okay. If the 4-step is something that's dreaded for me, it's because I didn't do step 3. My God of my understanding is loving, forgiving. It doesn't take inventory. No matter what, I got to go into step 4 excited. And here's something that I want your viewers and listeners to understand. When we go into step 4, we get to find out what we're good at. We get to find out what our spiritual gifts are and how we can utilize our spiritual gifts. We didn't spend much time on, all the stuff that I did wrong. And my sponsor's like, I did that, and all this stuff. But we get that out, step 5, here's a church where it's confession. You know what I mean? When I confess it and I repent, which is a church where these words I didn't know about that I can't believe I'm saying, but when we repent, it means to turn away from, right? And when we do that, we are giving God permission to show us grace, and that's what's so cool about it. Because after step 4, I got to see what I was good at. Character defects, I got to realize what my character defects are. We talk about relapse, relapse behaviors. And I'll never forget, I was speaking to a group at a treatment center, and, they were doing their relapse prevention plan. And the counselors, said, what do you think about this? And I said, these guys haven't been sober 8 minutes and you're having them do a relapse prevention plan. They're just planning the relapse. You know what I mean? But when I recognize what my character defects are, that means I am in relapse. That's recovery. As I recognize this, if I am, feeling resentful, or if I cuss, all the way down to that, it's like, wait a minute, where'd that come from? Why am I doing that? I'm trying to change the way I feel.
Mm.
There's some fear there. I like this too, is that I've heard some people say, well, I don't have any resentments. I don't have any. And I'm going, okay, that's great. Good for you. But let me ask you this. Who owes you an apology? Who do you think really owes you an apology? And they go, oh, okay, well, my mom owes me an apology. My wife definitely owes me an apology. And they start rambling off. And I said, well, you're creating your resentment list right there. And so I've heard that that really helped me. And that's powerful because we don't want to look at them.
100%, right? We don't, my mother-in-law says this, and she's a civilian. She is not, she's a normal human being, but she just said this, off the cuff. She said, you need to be able to pass the mirror test. You need to be able to look yourself in the mirror and be okay with the person that you see you're staring at.
Right.
And that's, for me, I wasn't able to pass that mirror test for years and years and years and years. And today I can. And that's just, it's such a gift to be able to look myself in the mirror and be okay with it, because I say this a lot too. I don't want to repeat myself to my audience, but I was an adult in stature, Michael, when I came in, and 17 plus years ago, but inside I was a scared little kid, fear of everything. And I didn't have words like integrity or responsibility or accountability. Like, these are all words that I can look you in the eye and I can look anyone in the eye, that at least I have those things. And these were gifts that were given to me in sobriety. And
Right.
sometimes it's the smallest little thing. And I've said this so many times too, but like, if the phone rings right now, I have an instant sense of really quick gratitude because I'm able to answer that phone right now.
I get it. No,
For
I get
years
it.
and years and years, when that phone rang, it was instant anxiety and fear,
Yeah.
and who knows what it was. And even in sobriety, it took me years to be able to answer the
Yeah.
phone. And here I
Yeah.
am 17 plus years in, and I am grateful sincerely every time the phone rings, because I know at least I can answer that phone.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's
I like that. And those are those are little simple things that people who don't have a problem with drugs and alcohol can relate to. You see what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yes,
And it's that anxiety. So what are they doing to make that anxiety and all that stuff go away? They are seeking visible things to try to fix that invisible problem. Overeating, gambling, pornography, um, even service work. I see a lot of people that are great people, and they'll hide behind a service work, or they stay busy. They're just moving all the time,
yeah,
because they don't want to be still and be alone with themselves. I say this so freely because that's who I was.
yeah,
Okay. And why do I recognize it? Because I did it. I did it. It's like, I don't take people's inventory anymore. If I recognize something in somebody, the reason is because I did it. And maybe be doing it today, and I have to like go, whoa, that's me. What's the real problem here? Why am I doing these things? And so, that goes back to what we're talking about, early recovery. People want to be so helpful, and go out there. I've had people call me all the time or reach out, hey, I want to start a podcast. I want to start a show and I want to do what you're doing. And I just say, well, just start it,
yeah.
and so, but be careful, be careful. It's a major responsibility.
No, I can attest to that. Like I said, just been doing it for a short period of time, but you said also, I want to touch on, you found out going through step 4, what you were good at. So tell us, you started to realize what you're good at. And so now you're taking it and you're, running with it is a massive understatement. Tell us how you found out what you were good at and that you wanted to make this your purpose in life.
One thing that we are born with, that's a gift, is willingness. Okay. And willingness is a spiritual gift that we're all born with. And I was willing to go to any length to get drunk and high. Right? So I took that willingness, which was a character defect, and now it's an asset. Okay. Now it's a spiritual gift. I'm willing to go to any length to stay clean and sober. I mean, and to live these spiritual principles out, and to live by faith. And that's what I'm willing to do. Also, I got to look at my character defects. My biggest character defect my whole life was this mouth. You know what I mean? Was this mouth, because, I did real estate and I would hustle and I'd twist the truth, I'd fabricate it, and I would speak to, large numbers of realtors and educate them on, luxury high-end home building and how to sell homes like that. And I was always a speaker, a communicator. Communication is a gift of mine.
Mm.
But today it's now an asset. I get to use it as an asset to not speak from here, but to speak from here and to be completely transparent and share with others, this is what I'm going through and this is what I'm learning through it,
Mm.
and this is, I'm seeing it through a different perspective today. And those are the things that are now assets of what I have today.
Beautiful. What would you say, and what are the most biggest difficulties for newcomers coming in? What is sort of your biggest topics people ask you about? What's the most hardest thing right now?
The hardest thing, for a newcomer, first of all, just coming in.
Mm.
I wasn't driving by and I saw a sign for a support group meeting and I pulled in. It was suggested to me, then it was told to me, then it was demanded to me, then it was court ordered by me, to go to, support group meeting. But when they come in, the first thing for a newcomer is to take the cotton out of your mouth. I'm going to take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. Just sit and listen. And the sooner that they get to that real honesty of literally saying, I don't know why I drink and drug. That's it. Just to admit that, that is the most honest thing that a newcomer can do. And I'm willing to go just today without a drink. It's amazing when I do talk to someone on the phone and they're really struggling, and they want to get clean and sober, and we start talking on the phone, and on the iPhone when you're talking, it has the timer, the clock that's ticking, right?
Right.
And so they're sharing, and they finally say, I don't know, and we start talking, and I don't give advice, I provide suggestions, and I say this is what's working for me. And as they're sharing, and I'm telling them, I can relate, I can totally relate. I get it. I totally can relate. And as they're sharing and opening it up, and I'll say, hey, can I stop you for a second? They go, yeah. And I said, I'm looking at my phone and we've been on the phone for 12 minutes and 15 seconds, now 16 seconds, now 17 seconds. I said, have you thought about drinking in the last 12 minutes and 20 seconds? They go, no. I said, do you feel just a little bit better than you did 12 minutes and now 42 seconds ago? They said, yeah. I said, that's hope and that's faith. Because right now you're out of self and you're experiencing something that's a lot bigger than you that's staying sober. So get to a support group meeting, and go put your butt in the chair and listen to that. And they just love it. They just kind of gets them because I feel better, you know. When I go to a support group meeting, if it's a 6 o'clock meeting, if they call on me first, I pass because it takes about 6:15 till I get out of self. I start feeling better at about 6:18.
I love that, because that's really what it is. And we touched upon it earlier that, we weren't raised to talk things out. And that's the mantra of the Begin Again podcast, is to help one person today, right? To let them know that they're not alone, that they don't have to live this way anymore, and that they completely can completely change their life around.
But most importantly, it's keeping you sober.
But that's the added benefit, right? It
Yeah.
is. It's a thing of service. And I laugh again because I had gone through this, I don't help enough. I need to help more people. My sponsee roster is not big enough, which again, that's an ego boosting thought, right? Like I want to be able to help more people. I want to have more sponsees. And this podcast came, and now it has the chance to speaking to people like you to, again, help one person today. And I say that hopefully this thing's going to grow really big and we're going to help more than one person. And you are helping people every single day. So, but where do we find you today? Tell us where M2 is today and where is M2 going?
I got to say something really quick, Gary.
Please,
is that it reminds me. So this answers some of the questions. So we do radio tours, and I'm on radio shows, all over the country, being interviewed, and with Fox News and ESPN, and these really cool platforms. And I did a radio interview with ESPN recently, and the guy says, what's the cure for addiction, drug addiction, and is there a cure for alcoholism? I said, I don't know, but I know there's a solution. And he says, well, do you have that answer? And I said, absolutely. And they went to a commercial break, and then they came back and they said, Now, everybody get ready, because Into the Rock is going to provide the solution to drug addiction and alcoholism. And I said the solution is very simple. It's one addict working with another.
Mm.
It's one alcoholic working with another. It's men working with men, women work with women, and it will change the entire outcome of this epidemic. You could put a wall around the whole country. Okay. I'm still getting high, because the problem is the addict. Okay. It's not people bringing the drugs in. The problem is me,
Mm.
and until I get honest, and the way we resolve that is one addict's working with another, one alcoholic working with another. As far as what we're doing, we just signed on with a big firm out of Baltimore, and as we speak, we're going to be launching to even more of a national level with major newscast, and Into the Rock being a correspondent, kind of a go-to guy on addiction recovery. And I'm going to be providing solutions, talking about recovery, not talking about stats. You know what I mean?
Right.
Every day, 1,000 people die a day of fentanyl and all this stuff. I'm tired of hearing that. Yeah. Somebody needs to be a voice of recovery. What's the solution? What do we do? How do we tackle these things? And, the only thing that does work is, and this is why the courts all over the country, they court order, people in drug courts to go to support group meetings. Why? Number one, it doesn't cost the state money. And number two, it works. And so we need to carry that message out, and I challenge anybody who's not anonymous, to reach out and to share your story, get it out there, to provide hope for the hopeless. You can reach us at mtotherock.com. That's mtotherock.com. Our new website will be launched here in a couple of days, and we're on all the social media platforms, and we're providing content, daily. And as a matter of fact, today we meet with our film crew, and we're starting filming today and releasing all sorts of new content for people.
Amazing. And I love you touched upon the epiphany of the forefathers of the Big Book, right? That they realized in 1938, I believe it was, that one alcoholic working with another alcoholic is the solution, right? And that is sort of the premise of your entire thing, and which I think is completely beautiful. And you touched upon something we talked on the phone this morning, which I love, is, I want to focus on the solution. We could have talked all day about, how bad it was, and the drunkalogs and all the places we've been. And I didn't even mention what places I've been, just not repeat it. I want to live in the solution. And that's what the show's about. And that's what you're about. And so it's mtotherock.com, correct?
mtotherock.com. And this is who I am today. I'm not that man anymore. Like when you made amends to your father, hey, Dad, I'm not that man anymore. That's not who I am anymore. But I don't even have to say it. You know what I mean? I'm a Christian, and I very rarely say, in fact, I never say that. And the reason why I'm saying that on your platform is that I don't announce that.
Right.
I don't announce that. I don't need to. I want people to see it. I want people to see it in my actions and the way I carry myself, because they go, I just want someone to go, I want what he's got. I want what he's got. How are you doing it? It's real simple. I go to support group meetings. I've worked the 12 steps. I call my sponsor, and it's that simple. And when I get into fear, I pick up the phone, and that's it.
That's simple for complicated for men and women, right? Which I totally relate to. But
exactly,
you're doing amazing work.
So are you.
Enough. Thank you. I appreciate it. And, we're in this niche, right, where there can't be enough of us. Like,
right.
You hear these words like, oh, it's a saturated market. Where cannot be enough of us. And I say us, it's a pleasure to be side by side, shoulder to shoulder with you. You're doing amazing, amazing work. I can't wait to follow you. I can't wait to stay in contact with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Up this way, we're going to get hooked up. When I'm down your way, I am going to come. We're going to see each other in person. And it's just a pleasure. I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story, your hope. It's all about hope. mtotherock.com. Follow them, find them. We all are. And it's not just it's for all aspects of life, practicing these principles in all of our affairs.
All of it. I'll end with this real quick. The disease has saturated the market, right? It has saturated the market. It's time for recovery to saturate the market.
Amen. I couldn't think better way to end on that one. Amen to that. Amen. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate you coming. I can't wait to look forward to you and keep doing all the hard work, brother. Appreciate it.
God bless you, my friend.
And God bless you, bud. Take care.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to another powerful episode of the Begin Again podcast. We sincerely appreciate your time and support. We hope that today's conversation has ignited a spark within you, affirming that recovery is not only attainable, but can also be a wellspring of strength and resilience. Our ultimate goal is to make a difference in someone's life every single day. By sharing these stories of redemption, we strive to empower you and inspire you to unlock your fullest potential, facilitate positive transformations, and contribute to creating a better future for yourself, for your loved ones, and the world at large. If you know someone who could benefit from listening to our show, please share it with them. And if you resonate with our mission and feel compelled to do so, we would greatly appreciate your support through a 5-star review, following us on Instagram, and subscribing to our YouTube channel, The Begin Again Podcast. The more positive reviews we receive and the wider our message spreads, the greater our collective ability to help others realize that change is possible in their own lives. Thank you once again for being a part of our community. May you be blessed on your own journey of personal growth and transformation.